They say enlightenment begins with a single step, but if you're over 60 and wearing the wrong shoes, that step might land you in the ER. Every year, over 300,000 seniors are hospitalized from falls, and nearly half of those are caused by one quiet assassin: bad footwear. Not disease, not karma, just shoes. The very thing we treat like an afterthought until our knees backs and dignity are in pieces. Take Thomas. At 72, he still believed in wearing them until they fall apart. Turns out, he fell a footwear. First one slip on a kitchen tile in his old loafers, and suddenly Thomas found himself on the floor. One hip shattered his independence, hanging by a thread. Doctors told him he might never walk freely again. But he did not by fighting, not by wishing, but by listening deeply to his body, which, by the way, is the first noble truth in Buddhist aging. This body will suffer unless we walk with awareness. This isn't a video about footwear. It's about awakening through your souls before you lose your soul. You're about to discover 6 deadly footwear habits that steal your freedom, slowly, quietly, and 4 life-changing solutions that monks, podiatrists, and very wise grandmothers would all agree on. So before your path to peace becomes a path to physical therapy. Stay a while. Let's walk through this together, mindfully, with humor, and with both feet still working. Footwear 1. The sensible heel that broke your life. There's a strange thing that happens as we age. We start negotiating with time, clinging to little symbols of who we used to be. The blazer still hanging in the closet, the lipstick color from your 40s, and yes, the pair of heels that whisper, "You're still put together." Janet was a master of this quiet negotiation. At 68, she was retired but polished. A former bank manager, still sharp, still proper, and still wearing her sensible 2-inch pumps. Not stilettos, she'd say. I'm not vain, just classic. But here's the psychology behind that choice. We don't wear heels at that age for the height. We wear them for identity. They anchor us to a version of ourselves that feels in control, capable, admired, attractive, still in the room. Except her feet had long since left the room. What Janet didn't realize is that the body changes silently. The fat padding under your feet vanishes like an old friend. Your joints stiffen. Nerves lose sensitivity, but the brain still remembers the woman who could glide through a lobby like a queen. So she kept wearing those sensible heels until her toes bent, her arches collapsed, and her knees cried out with every step. She didn't lose her independence in one dramatic fall. She slow dripped it away, one proud step at a time. Psychologists call this identity inertia, the tendency to protect how we see ourselves, even if it harms us physically. Buddhism simply calls it clinging. When we hold on to who we were, we miss who we are becoming. Janet missed that lesson until surgery forced her into 12 weeks of immobility and a walker. She was supposed to be traveling with her husband. Instead, she was icing bunions and watching daytime TV while he cooked frozen meals. Now she keeps those pumps in a shoebox labeled past life. If you've got heels tucked away for special occasions, ask yourself honestly, are you dressing for respect or refusing to let go of the woman you once were? Because aging gracefully isn't about lowering your standards. It's about raising your awareness. Footwear. 2. Flip-flops. The retirement fantasy that betrays you. Flip-flops. The unofficial shoe of retirement. Nothing says I've earned this like a $4 foam slab between your toes and a margarita in your hand. But here's the twist. Those innocent little sandals, they're betraying your freedom faster than a bad hip in a slippery shower. Let's talk about Thomas again. After his hip healed, he and his wife took a trip to Florida. His I'm Still Alive, victory lap, poolside, beach strolls, tiki bar hopping. The man was living his best Jimmy Buffett fantasy. In flip-flops, 3 days in, he was limping. 5 days in, he couldn't walk. Diagnosis: plantar fasciitis. inflammation of the connective tissue under the foot. 6 months of physical therapy. Later, he finally got his heel back. The beach. Not so much. Now here's where elderly psychology steps in. After retirement, many people unconsciously rebel against structure. You followed rules your whole life worn. The work shoes showed up on time. Now you just want to feel free. And what better symbol of freedom than a shoe? You don't even have to bend over to put on. But here's the trap. Your body at 65 plus isn't the same body that used to bounce back from a 12-hour mall trip. Your fat pads are thinner, your joints more brittle, your nerves a little more confused. Every step in flip-flops requires your toes to grip, changing your gait, tensing your calves, and slowly ruining your posture. Buddhism teaches that craving leads to suffering. Flip-flops are craving disguised as comfort. They say you don't need support anymore, but your body is quietly pleading, yes, yes, you do. Liberation is not the absence of support. It's knowing what actually sustains you. Dark comedy moment. Flip-flops are like that charming but flaky friend from your youth, fun at parties, terrible in a crisis. And crisis is what aging brings if we walk into it unprepared. So, unless your retirement plan includes a folding chair at the podiatrist's office, maybe skip the foam freedom sandals. There are better ways to feel light on your feet than losing your ability to walk footwear. 3. The gaslighting sneaker. Looks good, feels deadly. If you're over 60, there's a good chance you've got a pair of sneakers right now that look perfectly fine, treads still intact, no holes, maybe a little dusty, but otherwise good as new, right wrong. That sneaker is lying to you, and worse, it's doing it politely. Thomas had a pair like that, 3 years old, barely scuffed trustworthy New Balances. He'd walk his dog in them, mow the lawn, even wear them to church with a clean pair of khakis. They're still great, he insisted. But his knees disagreed. They screamed. Silently at first, just a little ache after walks, then a tightness. Then one morning he couldn't stand without gripping the counter like he was on a ship in a storm. Here's what most people don't realize. Sneakers lose 40–50% of their support within 6 months of regular use. Even if they look brand new, the midsole, the shock-absorbing layer inside, is often dead, flattened like your patience after a phone call with tech support. Elderly psychology calls this object permanence bias. We assume if something looks the same, it is the same. But aging doesn't work that way, especially not for shoes. They wear out from the inside out, just like we do. And if you grew up in a generation that prized frugality, you probably still believe in the holy commandment. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. That's noble, until it gets you a $40,000 knee replacement because you wouldn't spend $80 on new sneakers. Buddhism teaches us that form is emptiness, and in this case, that form is also orthopedic sabotage. Your old sneakers are not loyal friends. They are passive-aggressive energy vampires, draining your joints of joy one step at a time. Here's a test. Grab your sneaker and twist it like a wet towel. If it writhes like a yoga instructor at Burning Man, it's done. A proper shoe should only bend at the ball of the foot, not twist like it's doing interpretive dance. Thomas eventually replaced his gaslighting shoes. 2 weeks later, his knee pain was gone. He didn't need surgery, just support. Which, if we're being honest, is what we're all really looking for after 60. The path becomes clearer, not when we push harder, but when we stop walking in circles. And in Thomas's case, those circles were literal, around the living room with bad shoes and a heating pad. So be honest, when was the last time you replaced your sneakers? If your answer involves the word Obama, it's been too long. Footwear 4. The backless slipper, cozy, familiar, and trying to kill you. We all have that one pair, soft, cozy, easy to slip on when the doorbell rings, or when nature calls at 3 a.m. They live by your bedside like loyal companions, and like many loyal companions, they might just kill you accidentally. Let's talk about backless slippers, those fuzzy, floppy, freedom-feeling devils. Ruth was 78, spirited, independent, sharp as ever. Her grandchildren called her Grandma Google because she always had answers. But one morning she slipped on her backless slippers and made her way to the stairs. She didn't make it down, or rather she did, but not the way she planned. Broken wrist, bruised ego. 3 months of lost independence. The worst part, she said the paramedics told her, we see this exact fall every week. Here's the science. Backless slippers subtly change your walking pattern. Your toes grip constantly to keep the shoe from flying off. Your stride shortens. Your heel lifts too soon. Your ankle stability drops by up to 65%. But here's the psychology. These slippers are comfort relics. We cling to them because they feel safe, familiar. They remind us of control of home, of routine, of something that hasn't changed, even when everything else has. In Buddhist terms, this is attachment to the illusion of comfort. Comfort isn't the same as safety, and ease isn't the same as freedom. Your mind says, this is what I've always worn, but your body whispers, not anymore. It's like driving without a seatbelt because you're just going down the street. Until the unexpected moment comes, and when you're over 65, it always does. Here's the dark truth with a bow on top. Backless slippers are like your favorite ex, comfortable, familiar, and statistically responsible for most of your emotional damage. So if you love your independence, your wrist bones, and your staircase, maybe it's time to trade the cozy assassins for something with a back, a grip, and a chance to keep you upright. Because as Ruth now says with a chuckle, I loved those slippers, but they didn't love me back. Footwear 5. Tight dress shoes. When style becomes a strangulation ritual. If your shoes require a shoehorn, a prayer, and the patience of a monk, they probably don't fit anymore. But still many seniors keep them. Not because they're comfortable, but because they carry a whisper of who we once were. Take Thomas again. Yes, he keeps showing up because like most of us after 70, he's learned most things the hard way. This time it was his grandson's wedding. He hadn't worn dress shoes in years, but this was special. So he dusted off a pair of stiff leather wingtips that he swore still fit. Spoiler, they didn't. By the end of the ceremony, he couldn't feel his pinky toes. By the end of the reception, he couldn't feel anything. The nerve compression triggered a flare of neuropathy, burning numbness, and a weird buzzing sensation like his feet were texting without permission. Here's the thing, as we age, our feet widen, ligaments stretch, tendons lose tension, but our memory, that stays narrow. Elderly psychology calls this identity anchoring, holding on to fixed beliefs about who we are, even as our bodies change. I'm a size 9. These shoes always fit me. I'm not the kind of person who wears orthopedic shoes, but Buddhism gently reminds us suffering comes from resistance to reality. You are not your shoe size, and wearing shoes from your prime won't bring your prime back. It'll just restrict blood flow and put your ankles in a chokehold. Here's a test. Do your shoes pinch at the sides, but you tell yourself they'll break in? At 70, it's not your shoes that will break. It's you. Tight shoes cause more than discomfort. They restrict circulation, worsen diabetic symptoms, and increase fall risk due to loss of sensation. So let's say it plainly. Wearing narrow dress shoes in old age is like wearing skinny jeans to a colonoscopy. Unwise, unnecessary, and almost guaranteed to end in regret. Thomas now owns a handsome pair of wide-fit formal shoes. They have memory foam arch support and the dignity of someone who finally learned to dress for this chapter, not the last. Because true elegance doesn't come from how narrow your shoes are. It comes from how freely you can walk away from the parts of your identity that no longer serve you. Footwear 6. The one shoe to do it all. The myth that wrecks everything. Let's get honest for a moment. You probably have a favorite pair. You know the one? It goes with your jeans, your sweatpants, your garden gloves, and on bold days, even your funeral attire. The one shoe to rule them all for Thomas. It was his $100 New Balances. He wore them for his daily walks, then for gardening, then to the grocery store, church. And yes, once to his niece's wedding, when his dress shoes were too tight, he called it practical. We call it a mobility death sentence. Here's the problem. Different activities place different demands on your feet. Gardening requires lateral support and traction for uneven terrain. Walking needs heel cushioning and a flexible forefoot, and standing in line at the DMV for 90 minutes. That's spiritual warfare. You need everything. But the one shoe doesn't care. It does none of those things well. It absorbs dirt, loses grip, breaks down unevenly, and by the end of the month it's a crusty, worn-out relic, barely holding itself together. Elderly psychology calls this simplification bias, our tendency to reduce complexity as we age, especially on fixed incomes or when decision fatigue sets in. But what starts as convenience often turns into slow neglect. Buddhism would say, everything has its place, but no one thing belongs everywhere. And yet we try. We expect one shoe to be our walker, our gardener, our socializer, our spiritual companion. It's like asking a soup ladle to also be your umbrella, dark comedy moment. The one shoe is like that uncle who shows up drunk to every family event. He means well, but he's not reliable. And you keep inviting him anyway. Thomas learned this the hard way. Soil from his garden embedded in the treads of his walk shoes reduced traction on sidewalks. The uneven stress strained his knees. The shoes broke down twice as fast, and he nearly slipped on the church steps one rainy Sunday. That's when he discovered the activity zone concept. Don't worry, we'll get to it in the solution section. It changed everything. But first ask yourself, do you expect your shoes to multitask better than your grandchildren? If your answer is yes, it's time to retire. The one shoe myth. Give each activity the respect and support it deserves. Because even the Buddha had sandals and a walking staff. He didn't try to do everything barefoot in his robe. We've spent the last 11 parts exposing footwear lies, sentimental traps, and comfort killers. By now you might be side-eyeing your own closet. Good. That means you're waking up. Because here's the truth. Most mobility problems in old age don't start with a fall. They start with a bad shoe and a stubborn belief that I'll be fine. But as the Buddha said, you are not punished for your ignorance, you are punished by it. So let's stop punishing ourselves. Let's talk about what works. These aren't gimmicks, they aren't trends. They're 4 grounded, practical, dignity-saving practices that helped people like Thomas go from limping in shame to hiking with his grandkids. Solution 1, get professionally fitted. Find your true foot before you fall. You wouldn't wear someone else's glasses right. Then why are you still guessing your shoe size from 1983? Over 80% of seniors wear shoes that are the wrong size. Not because they're careless, because no one ever told them that feet keep changing. After 60, your feet widen, even if the length stays the same. Flatten. Lose fat padding and flexibility. It's not vanity, it's anatomy. Thomas discovered he'd been wearing shoes a full size too narrow. No wonder his toes were staging a rebellion. Here's what a real fitting should include. Measure both feet, standing, not sitting. Measure width at multiple points, not just the toe box. Observe arch collapse or high arches. Watch you walk, because your gait holds all the secrets. Elderly psychology calls this a corrective experience, when new information replaces old, outdated self-beliefs. Buddhism calls it beginner's mind, starting fresh with curiosity, not pride. Dark humor moment. Trying to heal foot pain without measuring your actual feet is like trying to fix your marriage by guessing your partner's name. Go to a specialty shoe store. Ask dumb questions. Make no assumptions, because you are not the same person or walker you were at 40. And that's not failure. That's just evolution with better socks. Solution 2. Embrace the 3-zone shoe system, a spiritual practice for your feet. Here's where most seniors go wrong, not from laziness, but from over-efficiency. You've probably said this before, I've got one good pair. I wear them everywhere. Walking, gardening, grocery store, funerals, baptisms, court appearances. Same pair, every time. And just like that, your feet have become martyrs for your convenience. But what if I told you the solution wasn't more shoes? It was the right shoes for the right places, worn at the right time. Enter the three-zone shoe system. The Buddhist concept of right footwear made practical Zone 1 house shoes, the temple pair. These are your sacred morning companions. Closed-back non-slip soles, easy to slip on without tripping into the afterlife. Not slippers, not bare feet. Think of them as monastic robes for your feet. Soft, structured, and protective on hardwood or tile. They reduce morning stiffness, support your joints before coffee kicks in, and prevent that just going to the bathroom fall. Zone 2, everyday shoes. Your Dharma walkers. You wear these for errands, light strolls, visiting the grandkids. They need proper arch support, custom if possible, heel cushioning, a wide stable base, so your balance doesn't rely on good luck. Think daily, karma shoes, not flashy, just reliable enough to get you through the world without making an offering to your heating pad that night. Zone 3, activity-specific shoes, your enlightened tools. These are your purpose-built companions, walking shoes for walks, garden boots with ankle support and mud traction, dress shoes that look snazzy but hide a comfort sole like a wise old man in a tuxedo. You wouldn't wear flip-flops to hike Mount Everest. Why are you wearing your walking shoes to pull weeds? Elderly psychology teaches that role. Clarity brings peace. Same goes for your shoes. Each pair has a purpose. Let it do its job. Right. Action begins at the sole. Probably not the Buddha, but he'd agree. Dark humor. Check in. Expecting one pair of shoes to handle every aspect of your life is like asking your recliner to also be your shower. Even Thomas got it. He budgeted, carefully splurged on his everyday pair, saved on garden shoes during sales, and suddenly, no more mystery, knee pain, no more surprise slips, just walking freely, mindfully, and still standing. Solution 3, custom orthotics, the prescription for your path. Let's get one thing straight. Those flimsy foam inserts from the drugstore, they're not orthotics, they're placebos with good branding. If your feet are tired, aching, wobbling, or whispering threats to your knees, you don't need padding, you need alignment. That's where orthotics come in. Not just as comfort boosters, but as spiritual chiropractors for your walk through life. Thomas didn't believe in them. At first, he thought they were a scam like $300 shoe sorcery, until he tried a pair of heat-moldable semi-custom orthotics for $40. He slipped them into his everyday shoes and said, "It felt like my feet remembered how to stand." Why? Because real orthotics don't just cushion, they correct. They support the arch, stabilize the heel, absorb shock, and reteach your body how to move. Elderly psychology calls this muscle memory, retraining. Buddhism calls it right effort, not pushing harder, but aligning with the truth of how things are now, not how they used to be. And here's the dark comedy moment. Generic inserts are like motivational quotes on Facebook. They feel good for 10 minutes, but they don't fix your collapsing arches. So what are your options? Semi-custom orthotics, heat moldable, affordable, shockingly effective, available at specialty stores. Custom orthotics, pricier, but may be covered by Medicare if prescribed for diabetes, neuropathy, or fall prevention. Strategic shoe modifications, insoles, heel lifts, arch pads, and pro shoe stretching can upgrade the shoes you already own. When the foot is stable, the body is at peace. Also, not the Buddha, but again, he'd probably nod. Don't forget this, your feet carry the whole story of your life. Isn't it time they got a little editorial support? Solution 4, the monthly footwear ritual, a mindful practice for staying upright. Let's be honest, most of us give more attention to the expiration date on a jar of pickles than we do to our shoes. But here's the truth. Footwear is a living system, and like any living system, it needs maintenance review, and sometimes loving release. That's why fix number 4 is not a product, it's a ritual. Once a month, do the Dharma of your shoes. Sit down, take out every pair you wear. Yes, even the emergency wedding heels from the Clinton era. This is a sacred inspection. Check for smooth soles that no longer grip twisted structure. Try the dish rag twist test. Pressure points inside. Run your hand through mold-worn heels or mystery smells. Emotional lies, like they're still good, they're not. This is Buddhist footwear practice in action. Observe with presence, release with compassion. And let's talk psychology. Elderly people tend to enter habitual blindness. We stop noticing things that have slowly degraded. That's not denial. It's overfamiliarity. This ritual interrupts that autopilot. It turns the closet into a place of choice, not chaos and dark humor moment. If your shoe looks like it survived a pilgrimage across a desert, it did, through your hallway, while plotting your fall. Add this to your calendar, just like a meditation practice or a doctor's checkup. Because your feet don't need 10 new pairs, they need 3 good ones that still know how to listen when you walk. Thomas started doing this ritual monthly. He even made a joke of it. I burn incense, play Enya, and throw away 1 pair that lied to me. Call it what you want, review, declutter, spiritual soul cleansing. But don't skip it, because what you ignore today may be what sends you to physical therapy tomorrow. 6 months ago, Thomas was shuffling, knees, aching feet, burning back stiff. He didn't fall because of a tragic accident. He fell because of years of slow, silent surrender, one bad shoe at a time. But today, Thomas hikes trails with his grandchildren. He wakes up, slips into his house, shoes, smiles at his orthotics like they're old friends, and walks, not shuffles into his day. He didn't need surgery. He didn't need a miracle. He just needed to finally treat his feet as sacred ground. Buddhism teaches that awakening begins with mindfulness. And there's nothing more mindful than noticing how you move through the world, step by step, choice by choice. Your footwear is not just fabric and foam, it's your foundation, your freedom. And in older age, it's the difference between staying upright or slipping into dependence. So ask yourself, are your shoes supporting the life you want, or are they quietly stealing it? It's never too late to change your path, not with regret, but with reverence. Because your feet have carried you through heartbreak, births, weddings, loss, and laughter. Now let them carry you into the final chapters with grace, not with a limp. Walk gently, walk wisely, walk free.